Okay, all ready to go.
Thank you, Fiona. Okay, welcome everybody to the Eauc AGM for 2020. This is being held virtually, as nearly all meetings are this year. And even 2 years ago, we were planning to move to virtual AGMs as well as people participating in the room as well. And so we were ahead of the game, but this is now the normal, and it's fantastic to see so many people tuning in for this, particularly on such a nice sunny day. So we're really grateful for your time and your interest in us as an organisation by being here this afternoon. A little bit on housekeeping. For those of you who have just joined, can I remind you, unless you want to speak, can you keep your microphone on mute so we're not getting any distortion of the sound? But as we go through, there's question and answers at the end of each section, so feel free to ask questions at those points. And there is a hand raising facility if you click on participants. There's also a chat box. And we'll be looking at all of those, or just wave your hands or something. We'll get the idea that you want to ask a question. And also, if you're asking a question, can you give us your name and your institution for the purposes of the recording? That reminds me, this is being recorded so that those who can't be here in real time are able to watch as well. We do have some apologies for this meeting. Mike Eauc from the University of Brighton, Eunice Simmons from the University of Chester, Zoe Robinson from the University of Kiel, oh that's me, and Rosemary Horry from the University of Derby. And so thank you for those letting us know you can't arrive. Can we move on quickly to the next slide? I looked very young in those days. Next slide, please. I'd like to introduce you to the board, as well as myself and Ian Patton as the CEO. The other board members are Pete Smith from North East Scotland College, David Duncan from the University of Glasgow, and he's our treasurer, and he'll be talking us through the finances a bit later. Simon Kent from the University of Southampton, Jim Longhurst from the University of West of England, who is your incoming chair, Peter Rands from Canterbury Christ Church University, Chris Long from Bridgend College, Eunice Simmons from the University of Chester, and John French from the University of Cambridge. In addition, we also have Fiona, who acts as the secretariat to the board. In addition, we also have 3 country conveners. Well, we should have 3. We've only got 2 at the moment. We have Damien Dalton from University College Dublin and Michelle Brown from the University of Edinburgh. And you can work out which countries they're conveners for. We do have a vacancy for our Wales branch convener, and we'd encourage any members from Wales to contact us if they'd be interested in this role. It's a free pass on to the board without having to be voted for, so it has some real benefits to it. And actually, we've not had a Wales board member for nearly a year now, and we do miss knowing what's happening in other jurisdictions. So it's huge value to us as a board to have you there. Okay, next slide, please, Fiona. Okay, the agenda for this meeting is for the approval of the meetings from last year's AGM, and I'll update you on the work we've been doing since the last AGM, particularly on improving the diversity of the board and of the sector as well. We'll also be going through retirement of board members, and we have 2 resolutions today where I'll be announcing the results of the election of 2 new board members. Ian will then present a review of the year, and David Duncan will present a financial overview. There will be opportunities throughout the meeting for you to raise comments and ask questions you may have, and please do use the chat box as we've mentioned, and we'll address these at the end of each section. Any other business was asked if there was any prior to the meeting, and none has been raised. So finally, once the AGM business is completed, we have a presentation from the Climate Commission, and Jim Longhurst and Manveer Gill are going to talk about the latest activities on that and what's been happening with the Climate Commission. Next slide, please, Fiona. Okay, the first item was the approval of the minutes. And we'll update members on activities that have been going on since the last AGM. The minutes themselves, there were no other outstanding issues other than updating you on things. So if anyone doesn't have any comments, we will agree the minutes at this point. please speak or forever hold your silence. Okay, I'll take that as the minutes agreed. Thank you very much. Next slide, please, Fiona. Okay, we as a board do want to update you on where we are on diversity of the board. This was something that was asked in the questions last year at the AGM in Manchester, and we've been doing quite a lot of work on it since. We are aware it's a big issue across the sector as a whole, but we as a board have wanted to look at us as a board and us as an organisation in this regard as well. So I'll give you an update about what we've been doing there. In June 2019, the EAUC board approved an Equality and Diversity Policy Statement. Our 2019 statement recognises that the board can and must do better to improve diversity. We recognise this is an issue for our board and for our sector. And this is in terms of gender, but also racial mix, disability, and so on and so forth. It's all aspects. Research by SOS, the offshoot of Sustainability NUS, with the contribution of the EAUC, has shown that the environmental profession is amongst the least diverse occupations in the UK. Other research has pointed to racial inequalities in the sector, such as the lack of BAME professors, as well as a pay gap in senior management. The recent protests in the UK and around the world, sparked by the tragic death of George Floyd in the US, has put a lens on current as well as historical and structural racism. Diversity as well as skills and representation from further and higher education are critical parts of our recent recruitment drive for new board members. At the February EAUC Board, People and Performance Subcommittee, at the February EAUC Board People and Performance Subcommittee, we agreed for diversity to now be a standing item at each meeting, and in 2020 to review our diversity policy and the steps that we can and should be taking. We will welcome and would welcome any input from our membership into this process. We want it to be a co-production process, and as much help as possible would be great. We would like to have a session on diversity in the sector at our next conference to encourage further discussion and shared learning and action on these issues to help improve the sector. So please do get in touch with the office if you're interested in being part of this critical work. We recognise this is a work in progress, but it's a continuous cycle. It's not something that once it's done, it's done. We want to keep it there as a standing item. Just for information, the latest call for trustees, of the 8 people who put their hand up, we had 3 male and 5 female, and ethnicity hasn't been asked to date, so we're only aware of gender diversity. But every small move is a step in the right direction. Next slide, please, Fiona. Okay, in terms of retirement of trustees, we've had 1 trustee retirement in between AGMs, and this was Tom Yearley, who was the Wales branch convener, who was at University of Wales Trinity St David. He resigned as of the 18th of August 2019. He resigned because he was leaving the university and he was leaving the sector, and so couldn't be the Wales convener anymore. In addition, we have 2 other long-standing trustees retiring from the board today. One of them is Chris Long from Bridgend College, and the other one is myself. At this stage, I would like to extend thanks from myself and the board to Tom, but also particularly to Chris Long for his time, commitment and passion in helping us as a board and as an organisation. And on behalf of the board, I want to wish him and the great work he's doing in sustainability at Bridgend College every success in the future. As I said, in terms of the Wales branch convener, we are seeking a Wales branch convener, and we'd invite any interested member to contact us. Branch conveners act as branch trustees and directors, and are part of the board, as I note. Next slide, please, Fiona. Okay, as I said, we have 2 resolutions. The first resolution, these are 2 retirements from the board, and therefore we've had 2 vacancies. Educational member key contacts or their nominated representative have been voting online for our 2 resolutions. The voting is undertaken by Civica, formerly Electoral Reform Services, so members can be confident of the process, and the voting for this closed on the 16th of June. In order to ensure we have representation from the further education sector, the board requested at least one of the board members elected is from an FE institution. We received 2 applications for this further education institution post, the 2 names in front of you, and I'm pleased to announce that Lawrence Fruin, Principal and CEO at South Devon College, has been elected by our members. So congratulations, Lawrence, and Severin, many thanks for showing interest. Next slide, please, Fiona. The second resolution focuses on the second vacancy. For this, the board were looking for motivated and dynamic trustees across a broad remit that included sustainability professional and practitioner, an emerging leader with enthusiasm, and someone working with staff and or student engagement. So we had a broad remit. We weren't expecting somebody to be doing all of those, but you know, looking at a broad list of things that would contribute to the board. We received eight applications in total, and thank you ever so much to everybody who put their hand up for this. I'm pleased to announce that Karen Morgan, Vice Chair of the Council at the University of Gloucester, has been elected by our members. And again, I'd like to thank all of those who applied. I'd also like to say that anyone who applies, we've got your name now, so we know you're interested in being engaged and involved with us, and we'll be very keen to see how you can help and contribute and work with us in other capacities. So we really appreciate the interest you're showing in the organisation. I'll now hand over to our CEO, Ian Patton, to take us through the annual report. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. What a year 2019 was. If you remember, I actually missed the AGM conference last year through recklessly catching pneumonia. But when I came back to work sort of 4 months later, the world had changed, thanks to the students, thanks to the young students as well, really leading the charge for a climate emergency. So it's been quite a year, 2019. Obviously, we didn't know what was ahead of us, and I'm determined that we find a way of framing opportunity in the pandemic. But 2019 was quite a critical year for the AUC. So next slide, please, Fiona. So in terms of numbers, numbers are good, 205 universities and colleges represented. We exist for you, our education members, but we recognise that we need to form an alliance to drive deeper, faster change through our links with companies, our links to strategic partners, our links in Ireland, UK and internationally. So I'm really pleased that our membership numbers are bearing up, but of course we exist for you, the voting university and college members. And I'm really pleased that 91% is our retention rate now. Clearly challenging times we face, and so we will have to be ensured that we deliver value to you. So we need to hear your voice on what that looks like in the post-pandemic space. But yeah, next slide please, Fiona. But our strategy remains. We launched this in 2017 after a really comprehensive dialogue with you, and we feel it's our strongest, clearer, future fit strategy yet. And what I'll do over this short presentation is just go through each of those strategic priorities that we've got. Next slide, Fiona. But before I do that, and Janet's mentioned that this event will end with an update on the Climate Commission from the EAUC student and organisational commissioners. But this is actually our most ambitious and challenging activity yet. And this is the EAUC leading or being a space of facilitating leadership across the sector, where we bring together the key agencies and representatives of UK, Ireland, universities and colleges and students. It's thanks to students that we have the appetite for a commission, and students are a core part of that. We have equal number of student climate commissioners as we do have organisational ones. You'll hear from them more, but that's a critical opportunity for the EAUC and you to ensure that we are collaborating together to create sector leadership for a net zero future, more ambitious, timely targets, and actually going ideally for an absolute zero. So more on the Commission later, but I'm really grateful to those agencies for coming on board with us. It positions us well. So the first goal I'd like to briefly mention is our strategic alignment. This is a critical one for us, that we speak the language and make the approaches that are required to align the benefits of sustainability, with the things that keep our principals and vice chancellors awake at night. Are we speaking their language? Are we presenting in a way they understand as a solution to the problem they're aware of? So our leadership work has been really, really strong in 2019, thanks to Worcester and Coventry on the Emerging Leaders Programme, and then at Cambridge with the Leadership Lab. That's a really critical space of pushing the boundaries of what sustainability leadership looks like and where it needs to go next. I'm very grateful to board Senior Leadership Advisor Wendy Purcell for working with us at that, and Janet as well. And Janet, I hope that continues after your departure. But what's been very interesting in that space is that it's created new opportunities for mentoring and coaching. And I personally would like to see more of that. I think we're all going to go through quite a period of challenge, personal and professional challenge, as we try to reframe sustainability as relevant to post-COVID pandemic life. So I'd like to see that continue, but it's been a joy testing out mentoring and counselling in our labs. Really grateful to Edinburgh, University of Edinburgh, for working with us on the business case for sustainability. It's what I said at the start of this piece. It's about how do we present, how do we speak, how do we align what we know about sustainability and its benefits with key sector or institutional objectives or challenges. So this is a really excellent guide, and I'd encourage you to look at it if you haven't already. And really grateful to all of you who were part of the group, be you from the risk community or the wider environmental and sustainability communities, on helping us create this adaptation guide for universities and colleges. Thanks to HEPCON and AECOM for working with us on that. If you haven't seen that guide, we find that adaptation for climate change is an area where the sector is weak in. This is a great resource to help you look at the risks and prepare. And actually, I think post-pandemic, we'll be better prepared for the climate risk, which is ahead of us. At least I hope so. It's my intention. Next slide, Fiona, please. I'm really proud of our advocacy work. For too long, I felt EAUC's voice wasn't strong or clear enough. It wasn't unified enough, and it wasn't proactive enough. But that changed over the last 2 years with a dedicated resource, and many of the fellows now aligning with the advocacy support. So really glad that our voice is clearer and stronger. We've had 18 blogs put out, and we responded to 14 consultations around the UK and Ireland. So our relationships and our linkage with all of the governments and various departments and all the key agencies, particularly as we had Brexit rumbling along and then obviously being vaguely settled. So new challenges and opportunities, but our EAUC voice is louder and clearer still. And I'm really pleased that our strategic partners in a survey felt that 60% felt that our advocacy was influential to the degree or beyond the degree they expected. So that's positive stuff. We held, excuse me, 15 webinars over the time. Oh, sorry, I moved on to the next slide. Next slide, Fiona, please. Thank you. But our lifeblood is sharing the knowledge that we have between us. So I'm really pleased that we had 15 webinars over the period, but 55 face-to-face events for our members with hundreds attending. And we created all new sorts of styles of intervention and events, like the Sustainability Sharing Series or the SDG and a Cup of Tea, very cheekily named, but very successful. So thanks to the staff for coming up with those ideas. areas. The conference continues to be a critical point of interaction and sharing for us. Now this year, the year in question, we had a very strong conference at Manchester. Thank you to Manchester for all you did there. It's so valuable when your host reflects the spirit and values, ambition of the event. That's always our objective. Our challenge will be this year, where we are going onto a virtual basis, and I do encourage you to go with us on supporting the conference in November, which will be online. It's an opportunity for us to bring in more voices, a wider range of voices, northern and southern voices. So please do support that. Next slide, Fiona. Following the launch with AUD of the Sustainability Leadership Scorecard, really pleased that in 2019 we had our first ever sector report, reporting on the performance, the whole institution performance of 45 institutions around the UK and Ireland. And that's a really important benchmarking, positioning paper for the sector to use and be inspired and to bounce off. But slightly delayed, but in the summer, the next annual report will come around. I'm really pleased there's even more institutions using the scorecard now. So thanks to Fiona for that. And our call to action that came out of those young people and the students marching earlier in the year has been so good at inspiring not only the Commission, but a climate emergency framework. So if you haven't seen that, do please look at it on the website. It's a great resource, a signposting of how you can take the climate action further and deeper and faster in your institution. I'm also really pleased that on the back of that, we've also launched a climate commitments facility. Now, if you haven't seen it, have a look. It's the very bottom of our webpage. But it's a great snapshot of the commitments and the timescales and the awards that universities and colleges around the UK and Ireland have got. So please do have a look at that and keep us up to date when you have a net zero commitment or you change a new key commitment. And it's a great way of just sort of being aware of where the level is at the sector. We work really closely with a lot of partners. HEPA is a critical one, the Purchase Consortia, updating the Scope 3 tool, and more with, we're going to be helping to update the HESCET tool that will come out later in the year. Next slide, please. But again, you are our lifeblood. So we had 40 regional and branch community of practice meetings throughout the year. I'm really pleased that new groups have formed on divestment and a dedicated FE group. Our FE members have been really challenged by unclear drivers or policies. I think that's changing. So we've dedicated a new FE support group with a leader and a helpline as well. So I'm pleased about that. But we really do recognize the contribution that so many of you are making. Your conveners, you're running groups, you're volunteering. And we've counted over 42 people doing that. And if you put a full-time equivalent value to that, it's to £88,000 worth of contribution. So we value that. And we value it in those that then go on to be announced as fellows. So this is part of that journey for them often. But, we would be nowhere if it wasn't for you, our lifeblood. So thank you. Next one, please, Fiona. Fiona? Oh, she lost me. I don't see a slide, by the way. Maybe we've lost Fiona's link.
Yeah, I think we've lost Fiona's link. Whether she's back.
I will continue. I think she's on her way back. I'm sorry about that, folks. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the next one. Oh, hold on, this is coming back here. Thank you, Fiona. So if you go on to the next slide when you're ready, Fiona. Thank you. This is a really important one for us because none of us in any sector, in any university or college, have the monopoly on what sustainability is or it looks like. So learning from others, learning from other sectors, if you just go back to that one on horizons, Fiona, when you get the chance, and learning internationally is really critical to us. So the SDG Accord, the SDGs aren't going to go away. The 2030 Agenda, inclusive for all, isn't going to go away. And it's been really exciting to see a steady line of principals and vice chancellors, particularly in the UK and Ireland, but internationally, sign up to the Accord and then report on that. It's light touch reporting, but it's important reporting. So I'm really pleased that the Accord grows and grows, and there's 169 signatories now, and they actually represent 30 or 40 countries now. So that's great, and it's translated into about six languages. And it's also now been accepted as a UN tool to bring the voice of the world's universities and colleges into the UN when they review the SDGs. So the Accord is a critical resource for us all. Again, a little bit delayed because of what, but many of you have been contributing your reporting, and that will come out in the summer. Powerful collaborations have very much cemented our place as leaders of innovation around the world. And I'm really pleased that, again, driven by the world's young people and those student marches and the UK government's climate emergency, which then inspired Bristol and many of us to declare that. Now that's culminating in a UN level global climate letter. And I do encourage you to look at that. That is going to be something which represents us at COP26. So do please have a look at that. It's already been signed by 257 universities and colleges, so it's well on its way. Next slide, please, Fiona. Scotland continues to be inspirational. I'm so grateful to the office bearers working under Michelle and the staff in Scotland. This period was the final year of a 3-year programme on catalysing transformative leadership for sustainability. Over 100 new resources, all sorts of creativity there. The EAUC is the sort of sector's formal mission reporting partner. A whole new college learning for sustainability champions program, and very impressive partnership with the Responsible Universities Group, which is most of the universities in Scotland coming together. And we created an internship there. And if you haven't seen on the exchange, the Sustainability Exchange, the Travel Better pledge, do have a look at that. It says challenging air travel in the academic and research communities, and helping us look at our options. Challenging, do we need to travel? And of course, this pandemic has been a great insight there to new ways of working, but also then making a pledge, committing to traveling differently. So thanks to Sonia at Rugs for that. Okay, so but I'm really pleased that actually we have agreed, or SFC, the Scottish Funding Council, agreed a new 3-year programme starting in April, accelerating action and leadership in Scotland's colleges to respond to the climate emergency. So good old Scotland leading the way as ever. Next slide, Fiona. I think it's my last. So as ever, we account for the carbon. We're a small organisation, but still it's a principle. And we are accounting for 16 tonnes of CO2, which, as always, we have offset. This did increase because of increased staff numbers and an office relocation at Gloucestershire. We're very grateful to our host, University of Gloucestershire, and Queen Margaret, sorry, in Edinburgh. But we will continue to work on those. But full-time equivalent emissions have reduced by 8%. And then finally, 7% of our waste goes to landfill. You can view all the details on our website. So thank you for that year. Really interesting, challenging year ahead of us, but we're fit for this. We're up for this, but we need you in it. So thank you all. I hand over now to David Duncan, our Treasurer, to take us through the annual accounts.
Okay, thanks very much, Ian. So the good news is 2019 saw a nearly 8% increase in unrestricted income. The bad news is overall there was a small loss, but that is misleading because the board had agreed expenditure of 7,904, mainly for member services, particularly the Making the Business Case for Sustainability publication, which I thought was an excellent publication that Ian mentioned earlier. Also some work with the NUS. So without that agreed expenditure, we would have made a small surplus of £367. Not adequate. We want to make a bigger surplus than that going forward, but at least a surplus. Staffing costs, of course, are our main cost, and we do everything we can to keep staff costs down. It's not a big team. It's only 11 staff, and 4 of them are externally funded. It really is a small, multi-talented, and a very hard-working team at EAUC. Next slide, please. So I think these statistics just show the importance to us of membership. As Ian was saying, without the members, we wouldn't have an EAUC. The membership subscription income is absolutely vital to us, and it's very encouraging to see the rate of retention in both the FE and HE sectors that we continue to achieve. But also, of course, events are very important, especially the conference and the Green Gown Awards. And obviously we're looking at the implications of the current virus on them for 2020. We will continue to monitor retention rates very carefully across the sectors, and also to seek to achieve, to maximise value for money for members as we go forward. We're also looking, of course, at public funds, because they're an important part of our income, mainly last year from the Scottish Funding Council and from HEFCE before it was closed. And we're always watching out for other opportunities. Looking ahead to 2020, which we're now obviously halfway through, thank you. We carried forward, the good news is we carried forward reserves of just over 185,000, and we continue to take a very prudent approach to our finances as an organisation, paying very close attention through the Finance and Audit Committee to risk, furloughing staff in a responsible way where that was possible under the government scheme, moving the conference to a virtual conference, as Ian was saying earlier, delaying the Green Gown Awards, which we thought was the right thing to do, into 2021. And then also we've set up a subcommittee, which John French is chairing, to look at income growth as we move forward. And if anyone has ideas about new opportunities to grow our income as an organisation, we'd be delighted to hear from you. That's all I have, but happy to take any questions from members.
David, there is a question that David Chapman at the University of Warwick put to Ian that nobody's picked up. He asks for Ian, is there a deadline for publishing university reports on the UN SDGs, or is the only deadline the submission on the 3rd of July? Might be worth responding to that before we hand over to Jim.
Fiona will correct me, but I think that is the deadline, because we're trying then to ensure that we get some presence at the High Level Political Forum, which is actually the 8th of July, so it's very tight. Fiona, is that your understanding?
Yeah, absolutely. We did extend the deadline for the SDG Accord, but it is the 3rd of July.
Okay, thank you. Okay, David, there don't seem to be any more questions, so I think we need to hand. Oh, there is one from Liz Harris. I think that could be for Ian or David, actually. Ian, do you want to deal with that one? It's about engagement with a variety of other sector organisations.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Liz, we by our nature are a partnership organisation. We cannot do this on our own, and our theory of change is to inspire and embed sustainability into all the facets of education that it needs to be in to become business as usual, to become the change that we seek. So absolutely, we have tens and tens of partnerships with all of the agencies which you mentioned, and many more. And I would say that the Climate Commission has been very successful at ensuring there was no doubt that the EAUC is leading and representing the sustainability ambitions of the sector. So our relationship with finance directors, with principals, with vice chancellors, with directors of estates has never been closer. The scorecard that I mentioned in my presentation has, because that's a collaboration between the directors of estates and the EAUC, it's very much brought us closer into a collaborative space, and it's really exciting to see AUDE really pressing on now with sustainability ambitions. So yes, I'd say they are listening. I think the climate strikers were a real change moment. I think we have our challenges ahead of us with how the sector will be positioned, weakened, challenged post-pandemic. But the fellows of the EAUC have been having a very lively conversation on how, and being sensitive to those that have not fared well in this pandemic, how we come out of this and how we see opportunity for sustainability. So yes, our dialogue and our relationships with sector agencies has never been higher or stronger. I hope that's useful.
Okay, thank you, Ian. There's been no other questions come through and nobody's raising their hands. So I'd like to hand over to Jim now, please, as the new chair.
Thank you, Janet, and also thanks to David and Ian for those presentations. Well, firstly, I'm honoured and delighted to be appointed as the new chair of the board. I'd like to welcome our new trustees, Karen Morgan and Lawrence Fruin. I very much look forward to working with you over the next few years. I'd like to take this opportunity as well to thank our retiring trustees. Firstly, Chris Long, who served with great distinction as a representative for the college sector. Chris served a full term of office and has made enormous contributions to the work of EAUC. So thank you very much, Chris. And to Janet, what a huge act to follow as chair of the board. Janet has served with great distinction in that role and served for 4 years in that role. A long service medal, I think, is due. Great passion, excellent chairing, and a unique way of keeping trustees in order. Janet, thank you very much indeed for all you have done for EAUC. A little clap, I think, colleagues, for Janet, and she's smiling and looking forward to getting out into the Peak District, I'm sure. So, as the slide shows, EAUC is a membership organisation, and we very much need a dialogue with you, our members. What we need to hear from you is what you need, what you want from the organisation. We need you to be sharing your thoughts with us so that we as an organisation can respond and help you to deliver the sustainability job that you want to do. We want you to be as involved as you can with the organisation, whether that's through the annual conference, the Green Gowns, or through the regional groups, the communities of practice, whatever is right for you. Please do engage, because we need you and we hope you need us too. So if we have concluded all of the business of the AGM, all the formalities, and you've all now quickly looked at the website or emailed info@eauc.org.uk to make your request for action, we can move on. Moving on then to the update on the work of the Climate Commission. And in this, I'm going to be supported by Manveer Gill, whose picture has suddenly appeared on screen and is waving there. Manveer is a student climate commissioner from EAUC and a maths undergraduate at the University of Warwick. Manveer has been an excellent representative of the student voice. Now, the Climate Commission for UK higher and further education students and leaders, a bit of a mouthful, but it is what it says. It is perhaps an unprecedented partnership between the Association of Colleges, the EAUC, Guild HE, and Universities UK. And we in the EAUC provide the secretariat that enables the Commission to operate. I have the pleasure of being one of the 4 institutional climate commissioners alongside Steve Frampton, representing the Association of Colleges, of which he is also president, Joy Carter, Vice-Chancellor of the University of Winchester, represents Guild HE, and Judith Petts, Vice-Chancellor at the University of Plymouth, represents UUK. In addition, we have 5 student climate commissioners, and as I said, you will hear from Manveer about their work. Highly impressive work that they are undertaking. So the background to this, as Ian has partly explained, was that in May of last year, Parliament declared a climate and environmental emergency. And of course, that both followed and has been followed by many universities, many colleges, sector agencies, declaring emergencies as well. And we know that we have national legislation that by 2050 requires the UK to have reached net zero for greenhouse gas emissions. But to declare is not enough. That might well be a symbolic act, but what follows? What action follows? Well, the purpose of the Climate Commission is to give impetus and to drive forward engagement with the climate agenda across this huge combined sector. We seek to catalyse action to create real impact and to drive that change forward. Now, the Commission provides direction. The commissioners provide the direction and leadership for the work of the Commission. We're a visible face, if you like, of the Commission, and we seek to build engagement and consensus within the sectors involved. We're fortunate to work with a wider council that provides support for the work, made up of students, vice-chancellors, principals, and other academic and professional service members. We make sure as best we are able that this represents the diversity of the sector. And what we're working on now is an action plan in response to the climate emergency that will draw together the issues and challenges that we identify to bring forward into the climate framework and action plan. Now, the slides have jumped a little bit further. Could we go back just to put some of the pictures of the supporting organisations? These are just to give you an idea of the very great number of organisations that are supporting the work of the Commission. Expert witnesses have come forward. They have helped us to better understand the issues that the sectors are facing. We have asked probing questions in our evidence gathering sessions. We are building our understanding about what is required, when it is required, and what further action is required to drive forward the agenda. And we're working on issues such as leadership and governance, estates and operations. I'm joined by a ubiquitous cat. Many of you will have seen one of my cats in this thing before. Zoom and cats seem to have an enormous affinity. But moving back to, as I said, leadership and governance, estates and operations, learning and teaching, research, partnerships and engagement all come within the framework that we are seeking to develop. And the next one, please. So the Commission was launched back in November at a very well attended meeting in London, but a lot has happened since then. Originally, of course, we were hoping to align the output with a presentation to COP26 in Glasgow in November of this year. You will know that COP has now moved to November of 2021, but we have decided that we will continue to deliver our key outputs by November of this year because we are in a climate emergency. So we have 5 priorities which you see on screen. Those 5 priorities are to focus our work. They're not the only things we will attend to, but they are the key priorities. So mobilizing the voice for influence and for impact so that we leverage the power of the huge combined sector of FE and HE to articulate what can be, what must be, and how quickly it must be done. We're of course, seeking to develop a better understanding of the research and innovation capacity that sectors bring to the table and to profile that work. Measuring and reporting is critical to our work. We want to make sure that we are truthfully and transparently measuring and reporting, particularly the tricky Scope 3 measurements. and you've heard already the work that EAUC is involved in to help the combined sector understand its Scope 3 challenges. Unfortunately, we are committed to a changing climate, whether we like it or not. So adaptation to some of those challenges is critical. And under the heading Deep Adaptation, we are looking at some of those issues that come with the adaptation agenda and the risks if we do not adapt at pace. And finally, the educational element of the Commission's work. This focuses on the curriculum, and of course it is about preparing graduates and those who leave FE, who will live through many of the profound climate changes that will occur over the rest of this century. So we really do have a very full agenda, and we will be undertaking this work at pace over the next few months. I'm now going to hand over to Manveer, who will tell you about the work of our student climate commissioners. Manveer.
Thank you, Jim. So yeah, I'm one of 5 student climate commissioners, and we work closely with student members of the Climate Commission Council, as well as the institutional commissioners, in order to achieve the goals that Jim just set out. And there are 24 student councillors, which make up 28% of the council. And we believe that student involvement is crucial for the Climate Commission. And we ensure that the student voice is heard throughout all of the work that the Commission does. And since the start of the Climate Commission in November 2019, we've been involved in the launch of the Climate Commission with fellow student Climate Commissioner Amy Brazier from Portsmouth College, who was part of the original panel. And I was lucky enough to attend the launch of COP26 in London with presentations from Sir David Attenborough, Boris Johnson, and the Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte. And we're involved in all of the Climate Commissioner meetings, bringing together the student Climate Commissioners and the institutional ones. And the Climate Commission has issued a target statement, which is further and higher education institutions should aim for net zero greenhouse gas emissions for Scope 1 and 2 by 2030, as per the IPCC recommendations as a minimum. There should be significant sector action towards reducing Scope 3 emissions within this timeframe. A first step should be to understand sector Scope 3 emissions and develop a framework that can be used as a basis for understanding the current baseline and establishing a meaningful target that is in line with the ambitions set out above. And Scope 3 net zero greenhouse gas emissions should be achieved no later than 2050, or as per devolved government targets. So that's our statement. And in terms of the things that we've been doing, the Climate Commission has facilitated free carbon literacy training for students on the council. And student climate commissioners have also played a critical role in the evidence gathering sessions for each of the priorities that Jim outlined. And they've been taking place over the past few months. And one of the things that we've done is added a student design and focus question into each of those evidence gathering sessions. Our latest activities include a survey, which is being sent to all student council members and students further afield. And this is going to help us understand what the student priorities are out of the priorities that we've set out concerning the climate emergency, and that'll feed back into the work of the Climate Commission. So if anyone is in a place to share this survey, perhaps through a student mailing list or a student union, just drop me a message with your email address. And I'll be grateful if you could share that survey so we can reach as many students as possible, get in as many of those perspectives as possible. During July, we'll be hosting 3 workshops facilitated by each of the student commissioners on UNESCO's future of education. This will provide a clear input for the Student Council into influencing education policy on a global level and provide students an opportunity to advance their political efficacy by contributing to high-level policy discussions. In addition, Sonia Perez, the Climate Commission officer, has been writing blog posts for 1KG, and she's been providing insights from both student and institutional commissioners on each of those priorities. Can I have the next slide, please, Fiona? Thank you. And so we work closely with our student voice partners, enabling us to communicate with a much wider student network, but also bringing opportunities and news from our student voice partners to the students on the council. And we're going to be doing that partly through this survey as well. And can I have the next slide, please? One of the Climate Commission's outputs is a collaboration with the Nous Group to produce a roadmap for UK colleges, offering guidance on how institutions can respond to the climate emergency. Nous Group is an international management consultancy based in Australia, Canada, and the UK, whose work with education, health, government, and social care sectors strives to ensure a better future. And so this roadmap will be included in the Commission's action plan. The roadmap will consider the sector's varying capacity and experiences in addressing the climate crisis. It will be practical and easy to follow, affordable and outcome-driven to ensure that it's accessible to colleges and it has the maximum impact that it can have. The Commission will create a subgroup of colleges at different stages in response to their climate emergency. The group will participate in a virtual meeting organized by EAUC in June to workshop the ideas for the roadmap. Including colleges with different capacities will feed into a more inclusive and accessible roadmap and help the sector of FE transition depending upon where every institution is at. And I'm excited to be part of the Climate Commission because students are increasingly worried and interested in climate affairs. And I think that the role that each institution plays in facilitating the changes that we want to see is something that we care about. So providing a space for co-designing solutions to the climate crisis is something that's quite new and unique. And I think that's the Commission acts as an example of how to get students involved in high-level processes. And I hope that this can kind of be part of the Commission's legacy after this year and reflect on what we've learned about this kind of stakeholder-led decision-making and how we can implement that more broadly across educational institutions, because that has to be part of the solution moving forward. So that's all from me, and I'd like to hand back to you, Jim. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Manveer, for that excellent overview. I must say, on behalf of the EAUC, just how fortunate we are in having such an articulate group of student climate commissioners who are so passionately engaged in this agenda. It is a fantastic thing to see, so thank you. So, are there any questions? I've been trying to keep an eye on the chat. I see that one question came in from Joe Chamberlain about offsetting, but Ian quickly got in to confirm the position that her question was exactly how a statement had been created to ensure that offsetting is only used at the right time as a last resort. And I see there's another question that has come in about the way in which students can get onto the Climate Commission. Ian, is that something you could respond to if we had new volunteers to join the wider commission?
The door is absolutely open. So if you go to the Commission website, which you'll find at the bottom of the EAUC website, very bottom, there's a Commission link that gives you all of the updates. It tells you who's involved and how you can get involved. So please do follow that link. Joe Chamberlain has asked for a link to the statement we referred to, and I'm working on that right now.
Okay, you'll pop that in the chat
yeah,
and in the minutes of the meeting as well. Are there any other questions from anyone on the work of the Climate Commission? It looks like we have answered all of those questions. So I just should say, if you'd like any further information on the work of the Climate Commission, the EAUC website has a very rich set of resources about the work and the next steps for the Commission. So do please peruse those at your leisure. So if there are no further questions, can I thank you again for your attendance at this annual general meeting and for listening to this update on the work of the Climate Commission. I think I have, and I think my cat as well, we together have to wish you a very good rest of the afternoon. Please do take care, stay well, but do keep engaged with the EAUC. Thank you very much indeed. Bye.
thank you.
Hello, Becky.